This 2-hour block of Revisewise programs is about English. It covers planning your story, writing the beginning and ending of your story, developing the characters in your story, writing leaflets and letters, writing interviews and instructions, improving the grammar and style of your writing, punctuation and spelling. The starting time of each program is shown in the menu, so they can be found using the clock in the top right-hand corner of the screen. First, here's a program about planning your story.
Hello, I'm here to help our puzzling pupil and you make the most of what you know when you do your Key Stage 2 English tests. In each of these programs, as well as in our books, audio tapes and on the internet, we're looking at the bits of English that you might find a bit tricky. Today, it's planning your story. So, what's the problem?
I've just started my writing test, so I've got my planning booklet and I've chosen to write the story called If Pictures Could Speak.
OK, so why aren't you writing anything?
Well, I'm waiting for my writing booklet. The planning time hasn't finished yet.
Good point. At the beginning of your test, you're first given a planning and instruction book, like this. Thank you. On the front cover of the booklet, there's a choice of 4 writing options.
Inside, you'll find lots of help for all the options and space to do your planning. Here's the planning sheet for the story option, If Pictures Could Speak.
After 15 minutes, you get the writing booklet to write your story in. But for now, why don't you do a bit more planning?
Well, I know what I'm going to write about.
OK, go on then.
2 friends go to an art gallery and a picture talks to them.
And who are these friends?
Ben and Joseph. And I've jotted down their names here.
But what do Ben and Joseph look like? What kind of people are they?
Well, they're just 2 boys.
And why do they go to an art gallery? When do they go to an art gallery? OK. Tell me what an art gallery looks like.
Well, it's large, I suppose.
And what does the picture look like? Why did the picture talk to them? I'll tell you what. Just tell me what happened.
I don't know. I haven't worked it out yet. I just thought I had a good idea, that's all.
It is a good idea, and with a bit of planning, you can turn that into a great story. The 3 main things you need to think about when you're planning your story are the plot, the setting, and the characters. It's something all writers do. Here's the beginning of a story called Charlotte's Web. Think about the planning that the writer must have done for this, and the notes they would have made about the plot, setting, and characters.
"Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern as they were setting the table for breakfast. "Out to the hog house," replied Mrs. Arable. "Some pigs were born last night." "Well, I don't see why he needs an axe." "Well," said her mother, "one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it'll never amount to anything, so your father's decided to do away with it." "Do away with it? You mean kill it? Just because it's smaller than the others?" "Don't yell, Fern. Your father's right. The pig would probably die anyway." Fern ran outdoors. She was only 8, but she ran really fast, and she didn't care that her shoes were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. "Please don't kill it. It's not fair." Mr. Arable stopped walking. "Fern," he said gently, "you'll have to learn to control yourself." "Control myself? This is a matter of life and death, and you talk about controlling myself?" "Fern, I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling makes trouble. Now run along." "But it's not fair. The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? I mean, if I'd been very small at birth, would you have killed me?" A queer look came over John Arable's face. "All right," he said. "You go back to the house and I'll bring you the runt when I come in. I'll let you raise it on a bottle like a baby. Then you'll see what trouble a pig can be."
In that opening, we're introduced to Fern and the pig, whom she names Wilbur. So what words could you use to describe Fern?
Well, she's upset because the pig's going to be killed.
But what's her reaction to that? She doesn't just run off crying, does she?
She's brave. She runs out to save the pig's life. And she's happy to look after the pig, so I suppose she must like animals and be quite responsible.
Yes, and it's her actions that start the whole story off.
Yes, it was a great opening. But what's going to happen to Wilbur?
Ah, you mean what's the plot? The opening makes you want to know what happens to Wilbur. And that's what the plot is in this story. It's what happens to Wilbur. Well, Wilbur is well looked after by Fern. She feeds him regularly, and within a few weeks, he's a healthy, happy pig.
Wilbur was what farmers call a spring pig, which simply means that he was born in springtime. When he was 5 weeks old, Mr. Arable said he was now big enough to sell and would have to be sold. Fern broke down and wept, but her father was firm about it. "He's got to go, Fern," he said. "You've had your fun raising a baby pig, but Wilbur's not a baby anymore, and he's got to be sold." "Call up the Zuckerman," suggested Mrs. Arable to Fern. "Your Uncle Homer sometimes raises a pig, and if Wilbur goes to live there, you can walk down the road and visit him as often as you like." It was soon arranged. Next day, Wilbur was taken from his home under the apple tree and went to live in a manure pile in the cellar of the Zuckerman's barn. The barn was very large and very old. It smelled of hay and it smelled of manure. But mostly it smelled of hay, for there was always hay in the great loft up overhead. And there was always hay being pitched down to the cows and horses and the sheep. Wilbur's new home was in the lower part of the barn, directly underneath the cows. Mr. Zuckerman knew that a manure pile is a good place to keep a young pig. Pigs need warmth, and it was warm and comfortable down there in the barn cellar on the south side.
So, that was the next event in Wilbur's life and in the plot. He was sold to Mr. Zuckerman. But before we look at further events in the plot, what else do we need to make notes on whilst planning?
Setting. Make notes about the setting.
So what about this setting? Can you think of any words that you would use to describe Wilbur's new home?
Warm, dark, smelly from the manure and hay,
Yes.
noisy with cows mooing perhaps, comfortable, perfect for a pig.
Absolutely, and just those few words have already given you a really good description. You could draw up a web diagram like this when you're planning your setting, or characters, or plot. So, back to the plot. There are a lot more events in Wilbur's life, the plot. Once in his new home, he's lonely without Fern to look after him. Luckily for him, he meets Charlotte.
"Salutations," said the voice. Wilbur jumped to his feet. What?" he cried. "Salutations," said the voice. "What are they, and where are you?" screamed Wilbur. Please tell me where you are, and what are salutations?" "Salutations are greetings," said the voice. "When I say salutations, it's just my fancy way of saying hello or good morning. As for my whereabouts, that's easy. Look up here in the corner of the doorway. Here I am." At last, Wilbur saw the creature that had spoken to him in such a kindly way. Stretched across the upper part of the doorway was a big spider's web, and hanging from the top of the web, head down, was a large gray spider. She was about the size of a gumdrop. She had 8 legs, and she was waving one of them at Wilbur in friendly greeting. "See me now?" she asked. "Oh, yes, indeed," said Wilbur. "Yes, indeed. How are you? Good morning. Salutations! Very pleased to meet you. What's your name?" "My name," said the spider, "is Charlotte. Charlotte Vatica. But just call me Charlotte." "I think you're beautiful," said Wilbur.
So, the plot is a series of events which set problems and give resolutions. The problems and resolutions so far. Wilbur is about to be killed, but Fern saves his life. Wilbur has to be sold, and he's sold to Mr. Zuckerman, who lives near Fern. Wilbur is lonely, but he meets Charlotte. These events are what makes the story exciting, so that the reader wants to read on. Throughout the rest of the story, more problems arise and are resolved, until the end, when, well, I won't give the ending away, except to say all those loose ends are tied up. Like all long stories, there are several problems to be resolved in Charlotte's Web, but you have only 45 minutes to write your story. That means you need to keep your story simple. Have just 2 or 3 events with their problems and resolutions to make your story exciting and keep your reader interested. Looking at stories and thinking about how writers have planned them is really helpful, but it's important to practice planning your own stories too, like the English team.
They've just been given the title Home at Last. From that, they have to come up with ideas and plan their story.
Well, they could be at the hospital or the dentist. You could do a summer camp, and it sounds really good on a piece of paper, but when you get there, it's really boring.
Could have just come back from a boarding school that you really hate.
So that's the brainstorming. Then the ideas need to be developed.
You could get a holiday from hell. And there's somebody you're only there for a weekend, and somebody's puked in the pool, and you can't go in because they're trying to clean it all out.
What else goes wrong on holidays? If you just took that one in particular, what sort of things would go wrong?
There could be like a really long journey in the car, and it's really hot.
His suitcase could have got lost on the journey, and you're in Thailand and it could have gone to America. And
as soon as you open your hotel door, the doorknob falls off or something, and when you walk in, there's mould crawling up the walls and that.
What first of all, is the most important thing with the setting, do you think?
You have to make it clear so people can understand where it is.
Yeah. You have to get, if someone's reading it, you have to make it so they can see a picture.
That's a good point. Use your planning time to think about how to make people really imagine your setting. How about the dentists? What might that look like?
They have really old-fashioned tools and whitewashed walls, and it looks like this person has just come out of a 1960s film.
The cheap and tacky curtains that they've got up so no one can see what's going on in the room.
That's some ideas about the setting, but what about the characters?
You could say, they've got a really poppy-out eyes or crooked nose or really thin lips and things like that.
The monstrous eyes just looking down at you.
They could have claw-like fingers and a pointy-out nose, so they look like a bird.
The English team are now ready to make notes on their characters, setting and plot, and write some great stories.
Do you see how helpful it is to plan your story?
I suppose so. If I plan my characters, setting and plot first, then I won't have to waste time whilst I'm writing it, thinking about what might happen next.
That's right. A few notes at the beginning, perhaps making character, setting or plot webs, can really help you write a better story.
So, the art gallery was full of old paintings. It was large, dusty, and dark.
From just a few words in your notes, you can bring characters and settings to life and plan the events in your plot. You could even prepare some interesting characters and settings before the test and use them in whatever story you choose to write. That's the end of our programme about how to start planning your story in the writing test. We saw how spending the first 15 minutes of the test planning will save you time when you come to write your story. We looked at how to plan your characters, the people in your story, how to plan the setting for your story, where it takes place, and make notes about your plot with a few key events with problems and resolutions. In later programmes, we'll be looking at beginnings and endings and how to develop your characters. Now you and your teacher can go over this at school. And don't forget, you can wind the tape back and look at bits of the programme again. There are also books, an English audio tape and our interactive Revisewise website to help you prepare for your test. So we'll let you get on with your test and you can get on with your revision.
The next programme is about writing the beginnings and endings of your story.
To help you with your Key Stage 2 English writing test, we're going to look at beginnings and endings when you're writing your story.
I know what I want to happen in my story. I know the setting, and I've thought of some characters. But where do I start?
Well, don't worry. Having difficulty writing a good beginning for your story is normal. Writing the beginning of your story is pretty difficult. That's why it helps to plan your beginning before you start writing. What's more, a good beginning helps you get extra marks in the test. There are 3 ways you can open your story. You can use some dialogue, people talking. You can start with an event, something happening. Or you can start with a description of characters or setting. Here's an extract from Michael
Foreman's
War Boy. In this short story, he uses a description to get his story started. What do you think of it?
One of my boyhood friends was aptly named Squirt. He was small and the son of a fireman. He had a fireman's axe, the next best thing to a tomahawk. Another friend was Wimps. Although a member of the ship road gang, he was admired for eating horse dung in the road for a bet. One of the small side roads trailed off into an unpaved lane full of dips and puddles known as the Bumps. It divided Hill Green from a small, dense wood and was the scene of many an ambush and highway robbery. Our trails crisscrossed the landscape of childhood. We galloped Indian file through sagebrush and tumbleweed, one hand holding an invisible rein and the other slapping the seat of our trousers.
Did you like the way the writer introduced his 2 boyhood friends?
It was great. They were really good descriptions. What a great name, Squirt and Wimps.
Yeah, and what about the setting?
I could imagine it. I mean, he didn't just write. I had 2 friends and we used to play on the green.
That's right, he went into lots of detail to help you imagine what it was really like. So that opening worked. There was no dialogue and nothing really exciting happened, but with a good description, the writer got you interested in the characters and where the story is set, so you want to find out more. There's another way to begin a story. It's all to do with the characters. You can have your characters doing what we're doing.
Talking?
Yeah, you can let your readers learn a lot about your story and your characters by using dialogue. So you could have some characters having a conversation, or you could have someone talking at someone, or to themselves. Look at the beginning of this story. It's called Sticks and Stones.
You're not having a party and leaving out a classmate who lives a couple of doors away. How would you feel if you were left out? And what have you got against Nicola? She seems like a nice girl. She's always friendly. You only have to pop in on your way to school. And don't forget your swimming things.
How would you like it if she'd invite you to her birthday party? There's no way Emma's going to come now.
She's called Sarah and is one of the 3 main characters in that story. Did you notice how that opening introduced the other 2, although they weren't even there?
Do you mean Nicola and Emma?
That's right. We found out about them through what was being said, through the dialogue.
And what have you got against Nicola? She seems like a nice girl. She's always friendly.
How would you like it if she'd invite you to her birthday party? There's no way Emma's going to come now.
It sounds like Nicola is quite nice. But why won't Emma go to the party if Nicola does?
Ah, the writer has made you curious about the characters. And that makes it a really good opening. One that makes you want to know what's going to happen in the plot. Did you notice the event in that opening, the start of the plot?
Do you mean her posting the invite?
That's right. That's the event that starts the plot. It's a good idea to put an event at the beginning of your story to make your reader curious.
So, what will happen at the party? Will Nicola and Emma both go?
Well, that's exactly the question the writer wants you to ask. That opening has introduced you to the main characters and shows you who likes who. It's also set the problem that needs to be resolved. How will Emma react to Nicola being invited, and will she go to the party?
So, I think I'll start my story with someone talking. Perhaps a conversation.
Good idea. Dialogue is an interesting way to let your reader find out a bit about the characters and what's happening in your story. If you're still a bit anxious about writing beginnings, look at other stories and see how they start, how they introduce you to the characters and let you know what's happening. You could even practice some of your own openings. Have you planned how you're going to end your story?
End it? I've only just planned the beginning. I was just going to start writing and see how it turned out. I could do a happy ever after ending, I suppose.
Yeah, you could do, but you really need to think about it a bit more than that. If you just make up your ending as you go, then you might run out of time, and it'll probably be very rushed. A rushed ending won't give you many marks. But if you plan your ending before you start, then you won't run out of time, and you'll probably have a better ending.
What kind of endings can I have?
Well, have a look at the middle of Sticks and Stones and think about how this story might end. Think about the different options. It could be a happy ending, or a sad ending, a cliffhanger ending, which leaves you in suspense, or even a surprise ending.
Hi, Emma. Hi.
Sarah, thanks for the invite. I'd really love to come.
Sarah's busy, Nicola. Use your head, can't you? Stop bothering her. Well, go on then. You didn't. She ruined everything. How could you?
It was Mum. She said I had to ask her. You've got to still come. I won't let her spoil things, honestly.
She will. I'm not coming.
Oh, go on, please. I'll lend you my gold chain again.
Well, don't ask me to be nice to her, though.
You won't even know she's there.
That Nicola, she pushes herself into everywhere.
Yeah, she's always doing that.
Maybe Sarah likes her. Sarah likes everyone. It's Nicola. She doesn't know when she's not wanted. Someone needs to teach her to beak out.
Yeah.
Poor Nicola. As Emma starts to pick on her, Sarah is caught in between.
Hi, Emma. Hi. Guess what? Nicola's got a new puppy.
She would, wouldn't she?
Do you want to come and see her with me?
No.
You'll love her, honestly.
You're getting very friendly with her, aren't you?
No. Look, I just want you to come and see her with me.
I'll come and see her with you if she doesn't want to. I love dogs.
Are you going?
Only if you will.
Come on, Sarah. I've got something I need to show you. Over here.
Isn't she sweet?
She's a bit fat, all round here. Maybe we ought to leave her alone for a bit now. Did you shut the gate?
Yeah, it's on the catch.
Go on, Pud, have a run.
How do you play this thing anyway?
You just have to keep your eye on the ball. Do you want to go?
No. You and Sarah play for a bit.
Okay.
Oh no! The gate!
Pudding!
Pudding!
Did you have any good ideas about how this might have ended? Here's the English team with their ideas.
How about a happy ending?
Emma started to feel really sorry for Nicola, and she started to regret what she did, because all her friends started picking on her because Sarah told them what she'd done. So she started to regret what she was doing, and then she forgave Nicola and then just started to make friends.
Or she might end up persuading Emma to be friends with Nicola, and then they could all become friends and they'd all be happy.
It could be a sad ending for Nicola, Emma or Sarah.
Emma could start getting all chummy with Nicola, and then they say that they take it for a walk, and then, well, Nicola's not looking and she sees something like a lorry and just lets it on the road.
How will they turn the class even more against Nicola? Because, you know, she's quite unhappy as it is.
Or they could, like, say things about her that aren't true and say about things about her family and everything.
What will happen to Sarah in an unhappy ending, though?
Nicola and Emma could never make friends and then she'll have to, like, choose.
What about a cliffhanger ending?
Emma could tell the friends to be nice to Nicola, like pretending, and went on a school trip, like down the sea and on the cliff. Like, when Emma, one of her friends, was walking beside it, and she pretends to trip over a rock and pushes her off the cliff, and then you just see it, like, just starting to fall.
A surprise ending could be happy or sad.
Yeah, maybe somebody, like, famous, like a pop band or something, could come to the party and they'd be like, whoa. And, like, Nicola's, like, she's friends of these pop groups and everything, and then Emma would all of a sudden want to become friends with Nicola so she can be friends with the pop band.
If the pop band came, like, say if Nicola got chosen to come up on stage and, like, dance with all the band, she could, like, she had to pick somebody else to go with her, and, like, she wanted to pick Emma just to see if she could make friends with him, and then she picked Emma, and then happy ending.
Well, there were some good ideas about how it could end.
Excuse me, don't keep me in suspense. How did it end?
Well, it was a sort of happy, sad ending.
How's that?
Here it is.
Hi. Do you want to come over to my house? I've got a new game for my Nintendo.
Can't stay, Emma. It's Sarah's party. I promised I would go. Sorry. Bye.
Bunch of babies at the baby's party.
Hi. Thanks for coming.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. Hi, Nicola.
Hi.
Hi. I'll go and send this food now.
I like some of the English team's answers better.
Yeah, they did come up with some really good ideas, but the real ending tied up all the loose ends. It answered your question, didn't it?
Do you mean what will happen at the party? Will Emma and Nicola both go? I'm glad Emma got what she deserved.
Whatever kind of ending you choose, it's important to resolve the plot at the end of the story. That means you need to resolve the problems that you set at the beginning of your story.
OK, I think I've got a great idea for an ending.
Go on then.
A spooky one.
Right, you better get planning it then.
OK.
That's the end of our programme about how to plan the beginning and end of your story before you start writing it. We saw that there are 3 ways to start your story: using dialogue, or people talking, an event to get your plot started, or with description to get your reader interested in your characters or setting. We also looked at endings and how important it is to plan those too, choosing from a happy ending, a sad ending, a cliffhanger ending, or even a surprise ending. Whatever the ending, you need to resolve all the loose ends of your plot together. Now you and your teacher can go over this at school, and don't forget, you can wind the tape back and look at bits of the programme again. There are also books, an English audio tape, and our interactive Revisewise website to help you prepare for your test. So we'll let you get on with your test, and you can get on with your revision.
The next programme is about developing the characters in your story.
To help you with your Key Stage 2 English writing test, we're going to look at developing characters in your story.
I've done my planning, I've thought of a good opening and a spooky ending. And now I'm trying to write about my characters.
Ah, characters, an important part of any story.
See, I've made a list.
Hang on a minute, a list?
Yeah, I've got 10.
Whoa, 10 is far too many. If you have too many characters, you won't have time to describe each of them very well.
But they're not real people, they're only names. So surely I can have as many as I want.
They might not be real, but it's important to make them seem real. And it's the things that characters say and do that make them become real and make you care about what happens to them. In the 45 minutes you have in the test, you only have time to write a short story. And a short story has to be kept simple. For a simple story, you don't want too many characters. 3 is a good number. Here's the beginning of a story called Spy Watch. Being a longer story, it has more main characters than you should have in your stories. They are Norman Starkey, he's telling the story, Cyril Jenkins, Mary Parker, Mr. Granger, Miss Millington, and Auntie Amy. As you watch, think about the things they say and do, and think about the words that you would use to describe them and the way they do things.
I was put on a train and met at the other end by a man called Cyril Jenkins.
Run, rabbit, run, run, run. Here comes the farmer with his little gun. Run, rabbit, run, run.
I'd never been out of the city before. The countryside was like a foreign land to me.
Starving hungry.
You like chocolate?
Chocolate? I love it.
So do I. They had some in the village shop a couple of months ago.
The girl in the car was another evacuee. I couldn't believe it. I'd never met her before, but she gave me half a chocolate. Her name was Mary Parker.
Here we are. Your new home. I hope.
Evacuees? Evacuees? What do you think I'm running here, Jenkins? A children's home?
There'll be no trouble, Mr. Granger. You'll hardly know they're here, son.
That's because they won't be here. I'm far too busy to fool about with evacuees.
The truth is, Mr. Granger, I've nowhere else to put them. Everywhere's full.
That's not my problem.
In that case, I'm afraid I'm going to have to report you to the authorities.
No need for that, is there?
You don't give me any choice.
Is something wrong, Mr. Granger?
No, it's all right, Miss Millington. Look, Jenkins, I'll do a deal with you. I'll take one, the girl. Agreed?
Oh, well, one is better than none, I suppose. Come on, Mary. Mr. Granger says he'll be delighted to take care of you.
Anything I can do to help, Mr. Granger?
No, it's all right, Miss Millington. Thank you. Everything's sorted out. Mr. Jenkins has brought us an evacuee.
Evacuee?
Mary Parker is her name. Mary, this is Mr. Granger's housekeeper.
But we've got nowhere to put her.
Big house this size?
What I mean is, we're not used to looking after children.
Don't worry, miss. She's a good girl. She won't bite. More's the pity. Come on. Now, son, what are we going to do with you, eh?
Mr. Jenkins? What are you doing back at this time? Oh, my good Lord, who's this here? Oh, well, never mind. Let's get him fed before he wastes away.
This is Norman.
Huh? Now, you call me Auntie Amy, eh?
What did you think of those characters? Who was a baddie? Who was kind? What sort of people were they?
Norman Starkey.
He's never ever been out in the country, and it's like a foreign place to him. Well, he's used to all the hustle and bustle and all that sort of stuff, rather than it being all peaceful.
He usually just keeps silent and lets everyone else do the talking.
Mr. Jenkins.
He probably knows like the country off the back of his hand, and you could tell by the way he was driving along, and he just didn't have a care for the world.
Like when he does actually threaten Mr. Granger, he's sort of like stuttering, you know, because he's nervous about it, but he's trying to like blurt it out and get it done with.
Mary Parker.
She just was a bit scared because like she'd just been taken away from the city. She didn't know anybody in the car or anything.
Well, she's really quite generous. I mean, like giving him half a bar of chocolate. I mean, like chocolate was very limited then.
She's meek because she's nervous. You know, like she was giving the chocolates to try and like make an effort, but she was still, you know, feeling quite shy. She didn't say, "Look, here, have some of my chocolate." She just gave it to him.
Mr. Granger.
Well, he seems quite sort of snobbish and, you know, up, you know, thinks he's above everybody else. He probably spends like the whole of his time wondering, well, am I doing this right? Am I standing correctly? Do I look better than the people over there?
Miss Millington.
Well, she seems a sort of mysterious character, you know, like the way she walks along and says, you know, things like, but where will we put her?
She's quite weird because the way she's always staring and she doesn't move her eyes when she talks.
She's probably the boss of the house and tell Mr. Granger what he has to do.
She's like as proud as a peacock, and she like wants everybody to see her and think how gorgeous she is and that.
Cruella de Vil springs to mind, you know, like the only difference really being that Cruella de Vil was actually quite a rich person and she did have that sort of power, but Miss Millington, she isn't rich, but she thinks she's that important.
Auntie Amy.
The sort of person who makes a big fuss over, you know, the littlest things, like she was saying, oh, it doesn't matter who you are, let's get you in here and feed you before you waste away. And
she's just the person you just want to cuddle up to when you're all upset, because she's quite cuddly and that, and she's just really jolly.
Total opposite of Miss Millington.
How?
Like, she's really kind and Miss Millington's really cruel.
Did you notice how different those characters were? The writer knew that the most interesting stories have a range of characters, with both goodies and baddies. When you think about the characters you want to put into your story, perhaps you should have a goodie and a baddie. Before even going into your test, you could prepare some characters. You could draw a character web. This is what one could look like for Miss Millington, based on what our English team came up with. She certainly looked quite mysterious and had strange, staring eyes. She looked extremely proud as she walked down those stairs. The way she talked to Mr. Granger made her seem very bossy. And what about the way she dressed and her makeup? Perhaps she's vain. It looks like she would spend a lot of time in front of the mirror. Now, look at this character web. In your planning time, you could draw one just like it. Then, from a few words, you could develop a character. Let's go back to the English team and see what kind of characters they can develop from this web.
First of all, who might this character be?
Could be like your dinner lady that's really nasty and you're stuck with her in your classroom all the time.
Dinner ladies could be like real nasty dinner ladies, and like if you had Toad in the hole or something, you could use a real Toad in a hole.
Well, like instead of spaghetti, it could be like worms.
How could they be cruel?
How else are people cruel to people and children? What would they do?
They're a teacher's pet, and they're always saying, and when they've done something wrong, they always blame it on you.
She could go around saying children should be seen and not heard, and like if you talk, she'll hit you around the head or something, or she'll make you eat Brussels sprouts.
And in what way is she loud?
She goes around with this massive, great big ladle, and every time she wants quiet, she hits it against something, and makes such a loud, clanging noise, it just deafens everybody so they are quiet.
What sort of clothes does she wear?
She could wear these really old-fashioned shoes that like kind of make this, you know, the clicking kind of noise when they walk.
Like have a bright pink blouse on that's like really small for her, and a grey skirt and a belt around it to try and make them go together.
How could you make this character hideous?
She could have those horrible glasses on that go like that, and then there's bits sticking out there.
And they just like perch on the end of your nose,
Yeah,
and they go.
she's got really beady little eyes. And just
if she had a cold or something, she could say, and then she could wipe it all on her arm, or she could go and blow it on her apron, blow her nose on her apron.
And how is she dirty?
And then she has one of the cook's hats on that's all dirty and slimy and that.
Or like she could have loads of dirt in her fingernails and mud on her hands, and then to try and be a bit hygienic, piled on loads of body lotion, and her hands are all white and it goes all over everything and makes it taste really sour, and people get sick from it.
Has all that given you some ideas?
Oh, yeah. I've written a few notes about my two main characters, and now I need to build a character web from a baddie.
That's the idea. OK, go on then.
Right. So my baddie's a liar. She's mean.
Nasty piece of work.
Or should it be a he?
Well, it's up to you.
We'll keep it a she. And she's rich. Then I need to find a good name for her.
That's it. Build up 3 good contrasting characters with plenty of detail about each one. Time to leave you to it. That's the end of our programme about developing your characters. So, what have we learned? We saw how it's a good idea when you're planning your story to write a few words about each of your characters, or make a character web. That's when you make notes about the way they look, the way they act, the way they feel about things, and the way they speak. We also saw that a range of contrasting characters helps you write an interesting story. And it's very important that you don't have too many characters. 3 is a good number. It helps you keep your story simple and leaves you time to describe them properly and make them seem real. You can always go over this by winding the tape back and looking at bits of the programme again. And there are also our books, audio tape and interactive Revisewise website to help you make the most of what you know when you're preparing for your test.
The next programme is about writing leaflets and letters.
To help you with your Key Stage 2 English test, in this programme we're going to look at writing 2 of the factual options from the writing test, a leaflet and a letter. OK, so what option are you looking at there?
Making a leaflet about a place called SeaWorld.
Well, that sounds all right. Why don't you do that one?
Perhaps, but I don't know where to start.
For all the writing options, there's lots of help and clues in the planning sheets. Read what it says there.
Remember that the leaflet is to inform people about the centre and persuade them to visit.
OK, so what do you need to inform people about?
SeaWorld.
Yes, and the planning sheet gives you lots of ideas about what's in SeaWorld.
So there's a cafe, a pool, and there are animals. There are even boat trips.
But you could make up other things about SeaWorld.
Perhaps it could have a creche for young children.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And what other information will people want to know about SeaWorld? Well, you wouldn't want to turn up and find it was closed, would you?
No. You mean I need to include opening days and times?
Exactly. As the main purpose of a leaflet is to inform, you need to think very carefully about what information you put into it. Imagine that you were reading the leaflet. What would you want to know? Just think about all the leaflets that get sent through your front door. Here are some that the English team found.
There is so much to see and do. Meet the characters in the original shops and houses. Ride on a tram car or fairground swing boat.
Everyone can get a closer look at it. Climb on the dragon's back for a gravity-defying roller coaster ride out of the castle. And now there's even a junior dragon for the younger ones.
There are big rides, fun rides, kiddie rides, in short. Something to keep everyone happy whatever the weather. Entrance fees and rides prices couldn't be better.
Over 55 displays with thousands of different sea and freshwater creatures take you on an unforgettable journey along the River Severn, from mountain source to ocean depths.
Once you've made notes about all the information you need to include in your leaflet, then you need to think about how to make it sound fantastic and persuade people to go there.
I can't just do that with a list of facts, can I?
No, that's right. Watch these next two film clips. They're two descriptions of the same school, but the first just gives you the facts, whilst the second uses lots of persuasive language. It's trying to sell the school.
Derwent's Water First and Middle School was built in 1904. The school has 22 classrooms, all of which have access to computers and videos. The canteen seats 300 children. The school day begins at 9 o'clock and ends at 3:30.
That's the facts. Now here's something rather more persuasive.
Derwent Water First and Middle School, the latest in high-tech, low-cost, extracurricular educational ecstasy. Spacious, clean classrooms, brand new computers, lovely hygienic canteen, seats 300 in comfort.
Did you hear all those good persuasive words? Compare the canteen seats 300 children with lovely hygienic canteen seats 300 in comfort. The facts are the same, but using the words lovely and comfort makes the same canteen sound much better. The second version was far more persuasive. Now, you're not trying to sell SeaWorld, but you are trying to persuade people to go. So, you got any ideas?
Yes, I think so. I must write the facts, but add some persuasive language.
OK, so let's have a go. How would you make the boat trip sound really enticing?
How about take a boat trip across the blue, peaceful waters of the bay to a magnificent rocky island on which lives a family of rare seals.
Oh, marvellous. I'd love to. I think you've got the hang of this, no problem. But don't get too carried away with your persuasive writing. In leaflets, paragraphs have to be short and punchy.
OK.
A leaflet needs to be easy to read. People need to find the bits of information easily, and that's why leaflets split up the information into short sections. Here's the plan of the leaflet in the planning sheet. It doesn't give you the headings for each section. You need to think about what they could be when you're planning. They could be sailboat trips, shark videos, tropical aquarium, activities, refreshments, admission. Once you've decided on the different headings, it's easy to order your paragraphs. So, how do you feel about getting started?
I think I'm ready.
And what do you need to remember?
I have to plan different headings I need to include in my leaflet. Then I need to write short, persuasive paragraphs for each one.
That's it.
I shouldn't go into too much detail.
That's right. Stick to the key information and then add some persuasive language.
OK.
So, what have we looked at when writing leaflets? We saw that they need to inform and they need to persuade. When you're choosing what information needs to go into the leaflet, you need to think about what facts someone would want to know. I mean, there's no point advertising an adventure park if you don't say when it's open. We saw that leaflets are a kind of advertising. They need to persuade people. That's why you need to use a lot of persuasive language. Language that persuades people that something is fun, exciting, fantastic. We also saw that you need to use short, clear paragraphs and order them carefully, thinking about what the different sections of the leaflet should be. At the beginning of the programme, I mentioned a range of factual writing that you might be able to do in your writing test. Another of those options is writing a letter. Do you have a letter option?
Yes. You have to reply to this letter written by Mr. Brown.
Right.
He has written to a local newspaper to complain about spiders.
And what sort of letter do you have to write?
It says in the planning sheets that the letter has to persuade him why he is wrong about spiders.
Oh, I see. Letters can be persuasive, informational, formal or informal, to complain or to invite. Just take a look at these.
Dear Miss Khan, I am writing to complain about the behavior of your daughter, so...
Dear Ben, I would like to invite you to my party on Saturday, 15th of May.
Dear parents or guardian, a school trip has been arranged for Class 6B to visit the historic city.
Mr. White, after reading your letter in the local newspaper dated 12th April, I was most concerned and I felt I had to reply.
That's why it's important to look for clues in the planning sheets to tell you what sort you need to write.
The letter option in this planning sheet needs to combine facts with persuasive writing.
Have a look at this letter from a Mr. Edwards. He disagreed with an article called Living in the City that he'd seen written in his local newspaper. Dear Sir, I read with interest your article on Living in the City, 8th of August, which suggested that people were moving in their hundreds back to big cities. I have to say that I find this difficult to believe. Living in the city is a dirty, noisy, crowded existence. People barely speak to one another, and it's not unusual to be a total stranger to the person next door. Yours faithfully, Mr. B. Edwards. He certainly doesn't sound too keen on the city, but how would you write a letter to try to persuade him to change his mind? Have a look at this film about Berlin, the capital city of Germany. Perhaps it can give you some ideas.
There's lots of movement and activity, and plenty of opportunities to make a living. Shops and schools compete with each other for the most eye-catching ways to draw in the customers. People from many different backgrounds live in Berlin, and that contributes to the variety and the flavour of the city, like the food on offer here at the Turkish market. And the activity never stops. As one part of the city is going to sleep, another is just waking up.
OK, so first, what facts from that film could you use to persuade Mr. Edwards to live in the city? Number 1, there are plenty of opportunities to make a living. Number 2, there's a variety of people and food. Number 3, there's always something to do, day or night. Now, they're the advantages that you can use to persuade Mr. Edwards to like cities. So by adding some persuasive language like bustling, dynamic, amazing, you can make your letter even more persuasive. So now do you know what the content of your letter should be?
I think so. I need to write the good things about spiders and add some persuasive language.
And what about your style of writing in a letter?
Well, I'm trying to change his mind, so I suppose I can't just write, "Hey you, you've written a load of rubbish. What you've written is all wrong. Let me tell you about spiders.
No, that wouldn't be very polite, really. And anyone reading a letter like that wouldn't take it very seriously, would they? They'd just think, oh, how rude.
So it needs to be more formal.
Yeah, that's right. You need to use more formal language. Something more like, in your letter, you wrote that spiders are dangerous. But in this country, that's not the case. No spiders are dangerous in Britain.
I see.
And it's also important that your letter is laid out correctly.
I know. I can start with, Dear Mr. Brown, can't I?
Well, there's something else that you should put at the top of the letter. Remember, all types of letters have a similar layout. Here's the English team to tell you how to do it.
First, you need to put the address in the top right corner.
Underneath the address, you put the date. Slightly lower down and to the left, you put the address to who you are writing to.
Then you begin your letter with Dear, whoever you are writing to, and then end your letter with yours sincerely.
If you don't know who you are writing to, write Dear Sir or Madam, and remember to write yours faithfully.
Once you've finished writing your letter, don't forget to sign it.
So that's the layout of the letter, but you also have to plan out how you're going to structure the content of your letter. Do you know what you have to do in the first paragraph?
As it's the start of the letter, I suppose I should introduce what I'm writing about.
That's right. The first paragraph should be very short. Just explain why you're writing. If it's in response to something, perhaps another letter or article in the newspaper, then you need to acknowledge that. The start of a letter to Mr. Edwards could go something like, after reading your letter, I want to write to you about all the good things that living in the city can offer. Next comes the middle section of your letter. That could be several paragraphs, and it's the main part of your letter. That's where you should give all the information and persuasive words in a logical order. If your letter's responding to someone else's, like the one to Mr. Edwards, it's important you make sure you answer all his points. If he says, living in the city is a dirty, crowded existence, then you could write, a lot of people do live close together in the city, but there's a real variety of people from many different cultures, which makes it very exciting. What do you think comes next?
There's nothing more to write, is there?
Not much more.
But it's important to put one last short paragraph at the end of your letter.
Do you mean sum up what the letter was about?
Yes, briefly. For your last paragraph, you could write something like, I hope that this letter will persuade you to think again about life in the city. So now you're ready to start planning your letter?
Yes, I think I'd start by making some notes about what information I need to include in my letter.
OK. In this programme, we've seen that letters can be used for all kinds of purposes. You need to look at the clues in the planning sheets to see what type of letter you have to write. It could be a persuasive letter, a letter of complaint, or an informative letter. We also saw that whatever the letter, the layout is always the same. We also saw how you split your letter into 3 sections. First, an opening short paragraph about why you're writing. Then, the main part of your letter, which could be several paragraphs with all the information. Then, lastly, another short paragraph, which should be the conclusion.
The next programme is about writing interviews and instructions.
To help you with your Key Stage 2 English test, in this programme we're going to look at writing interviews and instructions in the writing test. Which option are you looking at there?
This is an interview. I've done some of these before.
Oh, well, that's helpful then.
But where can I start? I don't know who to interview.
OK, well, let's have a look in the planning sheet and see what help that gives you. Remember, there's always lots of help in the planning sheets for all the writing options in the writing test. OK, so look at the first word here, imagine. What does that tell you?
Imagine. It doesn't have to be a real person.
Exactly. You can make the whole thing up. In fact, the planning sheet gives you some suggestions about imaginary people you might pretend to interview.
Yeah, it says an author, a person you know, or someone who's famous. I think I'll go for someone who's famous.
And as it says here, you need to decide who you're interviewing and why they're interesting. So why is the person that you're going to interview famous, and why are they interesting?
I think I'll interview an astronaut. I've been reading a lot about space recently.
Oh, that's a great idea then. Choosing to write about something you're interested in and know about is always a good idea. It helps you to make what you write more interesting to other people too. So, what's your next decision?
Why they're interesting.
Yeah,
I can make up an imaginary astronaut, can't I?
that's the whole idea.
Maybe it could be a lady astronaut. She could have just landed on Mars.
Well, she sounds really interesting. So what's next?
The questions and answers.
That's right. It's a good idea to make some notes about these in your planning time too. First, let's think about the questions. What would you most like to know about this person?
Well, being an astronaut's not very common, so I'd like to know how she came to be one.
That's a good place to start, but what's most extraordinary about this person?
That she was the first person to land on Mars. So, should I get to that pretty quickly?
Yes, that's a good idea. And what might you ask her about it?
What the journey was like, what Mars looks like, how she felt, did she have any problems?
You've got loads of brilliant questions there. Now you need to start making notes on those in your planning sheet. When you're working out your questions, don't forget to think about what's interesting about the person you're interviewing.
That's what all professional reporters do, like those working on Newsround. Lizo is planning the questions for his interview with the pop group Bewitched.
Well, the first thing you think about when you're setting up an interview with somebody is why are you talking to this person or these people? What have they done that's so special? Why are they different? Why do people want to know about them?
OK, so you've got your questions. Now what about your answers?
I know they need to say more than just yes and no.
That's right. If you just wrote yes and no answers, your interview would be really boring. People reading an interview want to know about the person you're interviewing. They want interesting answers.
I think the astronaut should give detailed answers. That way, the person reading the interview would be able to imagine what being an astronaut was really like and how she felt when she landed on Mars.
That's right. Hey, it sounds like it's going to be an interesting interview. But there's one more thing you need to think about.
What's that?
The pace of your interview. When you're writing out your interview, it's really important that you think about how you pace it and how you order it.
The structure of the interview is very, very important. The beginning's about what they're doing. The end is reaching some kind of conclusion. What do they feel? Is the new single going to be successful? Are their fans going to like them on tour? But in the middle, you want to find out a bit more about them as people and individuals, not just as pop stars or film stars or somebody who's written a new book or somebody who's walked to the North Pole, something like that.
And here's Lizo's interview. While you watch, think about how he's paced and ordered his questions.
Now, you've been in America. What was all that like?
America was brilliant, actually. We were there for about 6 months and all, and we were just touring the whole time, and we got to perform every night, and C'est La Vie, we released C'est La Vie, and it went to #9 in the charts. And also the album sold like over 1 million copies, so we were delighted.
Now, why do you think they like you in America?
Because we're great. I think we spent a lot of time in America. It was over a period of 6 months, and I think you have to really dedicate yourself for a while because it's such a big place. And it's also, we're kind of the only pop girl band out there at the moment, so we got our foot in there before anyone else. When we were actually over there, we recorded our second album as well, bits and pieces of it, which is actually out on the 18th of October, and it's called Awake and Breathe.
Now, how different is this second album from your first? What should people expect?
They should be pleasantly surprised. There's a lot of different varieties of styles on the album. There's still the pop music to keep everybody happy, and there's a country influence there. There's still a rock number, there's a psychedelic number.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
So did you notice those questions and answers followed each other quite naturally?
The interviewer didn't jump around from subject to subject. They used the answer for one question as a starting point for the next, so you could follow it really easily.
OK, so now you're nearly ready to get started. But just one more thing. How do you set out your interview?
I know, it says here in the planning sheet.
Oh, well, that's helpful then. For interviews, you always need to lay them out like this, with a colon after each person's name and with each person's speech on a new line. So now you know all you need to about writing out an interview in your test.
Thanks.
So, what have we looked at when writing pretend interviews in the writing test? We saw that there are often clues on the planning sheet to help you, that you need to plan who you're going to interview. Plan what's interesting about them, what questions you need to ask, and what good answers would be. Definitely not yes and no answers. Also, it's important to think about the flow of your interview. The start of a question should come out of the end of the last answer. Another option in the writing test could be to write instructions. Do you have an instructions option there?
Yes. For this option, I have to write down instructions for a competition called There's No Tea Time Without Tea.
Oh, right. And what do you have to do for that?
I have to write down instructions on how to make tea. They've even given me pictures to show me what has to be done.
Wow, that's really helpful, isn't it? Like all the other writing options, there are always lots of clues in the planning sheets. So what's the first thing you need to do? Well, what's at the top of this page?
A title. So I need to give my instructions a title too.
You need to start your instructions with a title so the reader will know what the instructions are for.
How about tea making made simple?
Yeah, that makes sense. Next, you have to write a list.
A list?
You need to make a list of all the ingredients and equipment that you'd need. It's important to write a list of everything someone would need to carry out the instructions that you're giving. It helps them to prepare.
Like these for jam tarts. And look at this fashion pouch. Again, the instructions make sure you know exactly what you'll need.
And for making tea, what will you need?
A teapot, water,
Yeah.
a kettle, some tea bags.
Yeah, that's good, but you do need to be more precise. If you write some tea bags, then a person following your instructions might think you mean 2 or 10, so you have to be precise. So, how many tea bags do you think you want?
I suppose it depends on how many it's for, but this picture has 3, so I think I'll say 3.
OK, and what's the next thing you need to plan?
The instructions.
That's right, you need to make notes on the instructions for making tea. By making notes of all your instructions, you can make sure that when you write them into your writing booklet, they're in the correct order. So, what do you need to do?
To make tea, you need to pour boiling water onto tea bags.
Well, yes, but it's not quite as simple as that. Try and imagine yourself making tea.
OK. I put water into the kettle and switch it on to boil. Then I put the tea bags into the pot.
That's right. It's really important to write your instructions in the correct order. Just imagine someone trying to follow these instructions. You need to pour the tea into the cup. The boiling water from the kettle can go into the teapot. Water from the tap goes into the kettle. You do have to do all those things, but it makes much more sense like this. Making notes of your instructions will make it easy for you to write them in the correct order in your writing booklet. Hang on though, we've missed something. But don't worry, if you forget an instruction and need to add it afterwards, just write it below, like this, and draw an arrow to show where it should go. Now you know what your instructions are and the order they need to go in. What's next?
I write down the instructions.
Yes, you do, but it's important that you use the right tense.
The right tense?
Yeah, don't worry. I just mean that you need to begin each instruction with a verb which gives an order. Have a look at this cookery programme. Listen to how Ainsley gives the orders.
Open up your oil for me. Can you reach that? That's it. On your tiptoes there. Get your oil up there. Then I want you to pick up your onions for me, OK? And then sprinkle them in. So as you're sprinkling, shake it first behind. So just take that mince, shake that into you there too. All of that mince goes inside of your frying pan. Now we're going to be moving on. Pick up your garlic crushes for me. Then I want you to flick it open like that for me. That's very good indeed. That's it, stand there and go. That's it, give that a good squeeze. Squeeze it, that's it, squeeze it. Now here we are, inside here, I've got some stock, there we are. So pour that in like that. There we are, look at him moving that, pouring all of that lovely flavour in there. You've got some brown sauce here. So give that a good 1, 2, 3, 4. Any idea of what we've got here?
Jacket
It's
potato.
a jacket potato, absolutely, jacket potato. Right, now cut that in half, look at that, all the way down. Cut that in half, and then we're just going to scoop that out. Just roughly chop that up, that's it. And then pick those bits of potato up and pop them inside your mince.
Did you hear how Ainsley started his instructions? Pick up your garlic crushers. Pick up the garlic. Give that a good squeeze. Pour that in, like that. So, do you know how to write your instructions for making tea?
I think so. I don't have to write, you should put 3 tea bags into the teapot. I can just write, put 3 tea bags into the teapot.
Yes. Can you see how by using the order tense, you also keep your instructions short and clear? But there is one more thing, something else you could use.
Something else?
Connectives, words like next, then, first, and finally, can make the order of your instructions really clear and more interesting. So, the instructions for making a cup of tea could become: first, fill the kettle with water and put on to boil. Next, put 3 tea bags into the teapot. Then, put the boiling water into the teapot. Of course, there is another way to make sure the order of your instructions is very clear. Any ideas? By numbering your instructions, no one is going to get confused about the order, are they? But you do need to remember to do it at the end of writing out all your instructions, just in case you want to add an extra instruction later. So, which non-narrative option will you choose?
I think I'll stick with the instructions for making tea.
And you know what to do?
Yes, I'll start by making a list of all the instructions you need to make tea.
Good luck. So, what have we learnt about instructions? We saw that you need to give your instructions a title. Then you have to plan what you need and make a list of any ingredients or equipment. We also saw that you need to use very precise language. And begin each instruction with an order verb. This keeps each instruction short and easy to understand. You can also use connectives or order numbers to make sure that your instructions are really simple to follow. You can always go over this at school by winding the tape back and looking at bits of the programme again. There are also our books, audio tapes and our interactive Revisewise website to help you make the most of what you know when you're preparing for your test. The next programme is about improving the grammar and style of your writing. To help you with your Key Stage 2 English writing test, we're going to look at improving the grammar and style of your writing. So, what's the problem?
Well, I've just written this sentence and, well, it sounds okay, but I wonder if it could be better.
OK, why don't you read it out?
OK. Tom and Simon went into the cave to find the chest of gold, and Tom and Simon found the chest of gold.
Right, yes. It makes sense, but it could be improved. Improving the grammar and style of your writing is important because not only will it make it easier for people to read what you've written, but it will get you extra marks in the test. I think using some pronouns could help your sentence. Pronouns can go in place of nouns in a sentence. Watch this and count how many times it mentions Alice and the book. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by Alice's sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice, Alice had peeped into the book Alice's sister was reading, but the book had no pictures or conversations in the book. Could you hear how repetitive that sounded? Did you count all the times Alice's name was mentioned? I counted 4, and 3 times it mentioned the book. What that story needs are some pronouns. Count the number of Alice's and the books this time. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice, she'd peeked into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. This time, there was only one Alice. The rest of the time, Alice was replaced with a pronoun, either her or she. And there was only one mention of the book. Everywhere else, the book became an it. There are still some nouns at the start because it's important to make sure that the reader knows who the she or her or it is. Otherwise, it can be very confusing.
How are you getting on?
What? Oh, I think I've fixed it. Just needs a good thump of the mallet to get the water started. Trouble is, it's a two-handed job because I'll need to hold this down. Could you give me a hand?
Sure. What is it you want me to do?
Right, you take the mallet. Now, when I nod my head, you hit it.
When you nod your head, I hit it.
That's right. OK.
So, you see how pronouns can really improve the style of your writing, but you always need to make sure that the reader knows who or what the pronouns are referring to. A pronoun could be me or you.
Or it could be us, or him, or her.
So let's get back to your sentence and try and replace some of those nouns with pronouns.
Well, in my sentence, I repeat Tom and Simon, and I repeat the chest of gold. So, I could replace the second Tom and Simon with they.
Yeah.
And I could replace the chest of gold, with it.
Right.
Then my sentence becomes, Tom and Simon went into the cave to find the chest of gold, and they found it.
Excellent. That sounds loads better, and you've remembered to use the nouns at the beginning of the sentence to avoid any possible confusion.
But won't I make a mess of my writing paper if I change it like this?
Not at all. If you decide there are some nouns you want to replace, just cross through them and write the pronouns beside or above them, like this. Don't waste time trying to rub things out. As long as it's clear what you mean, you won't lose any marks. You'll actually gain marks for improving your writing.
Well, I've just read this sentence. Well, I thought it was okay, but it's a bit boring, really.
All right, then read it out.
Okay. The knights rode into the forest.
Is that it? I see what you mean. Someone reading that wouldn't have any idea about what the forest looked like or how the knights were feeling. Don't worry, you just need to put in some descriptive words, adjectives and adverbs. Have a look at this.
A cat. What kind of cat? A big stripy cat. What, like my Tiddles at home? No, no. A wild cat. A jungle cat. A tiger. Right. So what about it? What about what? What about this tiger, man? What do you mean? What's it doing? Doing? Well, it's moving, isn't it? Moving. What, running rapidly? Sneaking slowly? Jumping joyously? Or doing the okey-dokey? No, it's walking softly on its paws, looking out for danger. Ah, I see. Padding warily. Padding warily.
There were some great descriptions there. So has that helped?
Yes. I need to use some adjectives to describe the nouns and adverbs to describe the verbs. to say how, when or where things are being done.
OK, let's have a go then.
OK. Next, the brave knight rode silently into the forbidding forest.
Wow, I wouldn't fancy being one of those knights, even if they are brave. Using adjectives and adverbs really brings a sentence to life so that readers can see what's been written about. Have a look at this. Captain Crimson, fearless space crusader, and Thomas are turning a rather dull story of one of his adventures into a real page-turner.
Have you seen this?
Not yet. Dad's only just finished it. Why, what's wrong with it?
It's dull. Dull, 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 dull.
You don't like it then?
Look at this. Captain Crimson looked at the alien landscape in front of him. It was quite nice. Quite nice? Hi, I'm Captain Crimson, fearless space crusader, explorer of quite nice places.
Quite nice doesn't really tell you very much. It's not very descriptive. Thomas and Captain Crimson have got their work cut out.
And listen to this bit. Captain Crimson was so happy, he was whistling a little tune.
Well, Dad's in a good mood, so he's made Captain Crimson happy too.
Happy? I'm Captain Crimson. I don't do happy. I don't do whistling, and I definitely don't do whistling little tunes.
That's right. When you're describing characters, you have to keep them consistent. Someone who's brave isn't going to suddenly become a coward.
Perhaps we better start again. Oh, I know. Why don't we draw the planet with two suns? That'd make it hot and sweaty.
Yes. Then we could say something like, twin suns shone down.
What about beat down?
Yes. Beat sounds even hotter. Twin suns beat down upon Captain Crimson and his crew.
We ought to say something about the heat.
Yes, OK, I know. The heat was utterly stifling and the air was filled with a vile smell.
That's good. Why don't we put stench instead of smell?
I like it. Stench sounds even smellier.
So the heat was utterly stifling and the air was filled with a vile stench. Oh, this place sounds revolting.
Why, thank you, short stuff.
It's good to try not to use words which are vague, like smell, in your story. The word stench lets the reader know immediately that the smell is overwhelming and horrible.
So, what did the landing party find while they were exploring this hot, smelly planet?
Giant vegetables.
I'm sorry, I thought you just said vegetables.
I did. Giant, rotten vegetables. That's why it smells so bad. They've beamed down into a giant's vegetable patch.
Oh, yeah! I could draw huge, rotten cabbages and monstrous tomatoes with massive bite marks out of them.
I can almost hear Widget say, "Look at the size of those cabbages!"
I think we should see the giant next.
Then why don't you draw the crew wobbling about as the ground shakes and a giant boot comes into view?
OK. And what should we put for the story?
How about the landing party gasped as a big boot came into view?
Well, if he's a giant, big doesn't sound quite big enough.
What about gigantic?
Or immense?
Stupendous?
Mega monstrous!
That's not a real word.
No, but it sounds like you're describing something 2 galaxies beyond big.
You're right. Mega monstrous it is.
Here's the new, exciting adventure of Captain Crimson. Look out for all the descriptive words.
The Adventures of Captain Crimson, Space Crusader. The Galileo's water tank had sprung a leak, and they were desperate to refill it. So they had made an emergency landing on an unexplored planet. Suddenly, there was a noise like thunder, and the ground began to shake.
What on earth is that?
I don't know, but whatever it is, it's heading this way. The landing party gasped as a mega monstrous boot appeared.
It's a giant.
Let's hope he's friendly. With a mighty roar, the giant's massive hand swooped down and snatched the landing party from the ground.
Hey!
Oh! Gotcha! What are you doing here?
We come in peace, my friend. We need water.
If you want water, you must fight me for it.
I'll take you on, but let my crew go free.
Captain, you are in serious trouble.
This is unbearable. You could die.
Let's not crumble under pressure. This is what we're going to do.
As the noble captain prepared to fight for their lives, his capable crew escaped to put his plan into action.
Hurry up, Tip. There's so little time to save the captain.
One stumble and you're mine. The nimble-footed captain was too quick for the lumbering giant.
Down here, big fella.
We'll get ya.
Missed.
As the landing pods flew in low, the captain put his part of the plan into action.
Take this and that, you big bully.
Ow! Ooh! Ow!
And that.
With expert skill, the crew hooked onto the giant's strawberry net.
Steady as she goes, men. That was an incredible bit of footwork out there, Captain. Thanks for saving us.
No need for thanks, Optic. It's all in a day's work.
All those words made every line of that story much more exciting. So, in the test, when you write your story, think about how you can make each sentence really interesting by improving your grammar and style.
OK, I can use pronouns, adjectives and adverbs to help me do that.
That's right. And don't forget, it's OK to make changes and cross out any mistakes. That's the end of our programme about grammar and style. So let's check what we've done. First, we learned that extra marks are awarded in the writing test for good style and grammar. We saw how you can replace repetitive nouns with pronouns. We saw how to use adjectives to describe nouns and adverbs to describe the verbs, to really improve the style of your writing and to help your reader to see in their mind exactly what you're writing about. And we saw examples of how to make your writing more interesting by choosing more interesting words. Now you and your teacher can go over this at school. And don't forget, you can wind the tape back and look at bits of the programme again. There are also books, an English audio tape, and our interactive Revisewise website to help you prepare for your test.
The next programme is about punctuation.
To help you with your Key Stage 2 English writing test, we're going to look at punctuation. So, what's the problem?
Well, I finished writing my story and I'm waiting for the test to end.
So, have you checked it?
I've read it through.
And what were you looking for?
Looking for? Well, nothing really. I just read it through.
Well, reading it through is a good idea, but you need to be looking for ways to improve it.
But what do I look for?
Well, a good place to start is with the punctuation. Good punctuation makes good sense. Without punctuation, or with punctuation in the wrong place, no one can make sense of what you write. What's more, extra marks are given in the test for using good punctuation. So that's why in this programme, we're going to help you make sense of punctuation. And you're not the only one who has problems. Lots of people do.
I don't use commas and full stops because I don't know where to put them.
Like capital letters are supposed to be at the beginning of a sentence, but I'm forever putting them in the middle and at the end. Like full stops are supposed to be at the end of a sentence, and sometimes I'll be putting them in the middle.
Sometimes after I've done my work, I look back at my work and I just can't see where I should put the commas in. It just doesn't hit me at all.
Did any of that sound familiar? Punctuation problems can really cause chaos. But what do sentences need to make sense? Yes, a capital letter at the beginning and a full stop at the end. That's the first bit of punctuation you need to check for. And it's just a small part of the punctuation that's missing from Sentence City. And Captain Capital is on his way to sort it out.
Not much sense in Sentence City right now. Where's Captain Capital?
Captain Capital and full stop. At your service.
Thank goodness. Captain Capital, Sentence City is in chaos. What can you do?
Don't worry. We're used to this sort of thing. We all know what we have to do. We're a team, see?
It's really easy to miss off a capital letter and a full stop by accident when you're writing your story. That's why it's important to always check for them before the end of your test. Look at this example. If you find any missed capital letters, just cross through the small letter and write a capital, like this. It's okay to cross letters or words out in the test. You won't lose any marks, and it's much quicker than trying to rub something out. There's still a capital letter missing. Can you spot it? There are no more sentences to start, but where else do you need them? What about proper nouns? They're special nouns which need capital letters. They're the particular names given to people, places, and things.
For example, there are many ships all over the world, but there was only one Titanic. That's why the word Titanic needs a capital letter. There are lots of icebergs, though, so that doesn't.
And all names of people, special places, or animals need capital letters, like Puddles the cat. And like before, if you need to add a capital letter, just cross through the small letter. Adding the missing capital letters and full stops does help your writing make sense, but there are more bits of punctuation you need to check for. Let's look more closely at this sentence. Purring loudly, Puddles her cat rubbed itself against her legs. There's something missing from that sentence. It needs something to break it up. While you think about what's missing, let's see how Sentence City is getting on. It might remind you of what's missing from that sentence.
That's put the words into sentences, but the long ones are unreadable. There are no pauses in them. Something's missing.
It's me! I said it's me, down here by your feet.
The comma. Now, can you break up the long sentences in Sentence City?
Of course I can. It is my job, you know.
So, commas break up sentences. They give your reader a space to breathe. Let's go back to that sentence. It can be really difficult to work out where to put commas in a sentence. The easiest way to work it out is to read it out. In your test, you can do that in your head. So, do you want to have a go? First, with no breaths.
OK. Purring loudly, Puddles her cat rubbed itself against her legs.
See how it doesn't really sound right?
Yes, it's a bit rushed. Perhaps if I put a comma before Puddles,
Right.
like this. Purring loudly, Puddles her cat rubbed itself against her legs.
See, that sounds loads better, doesn't it? Is there any more room for any more breaths?
I know. Perhaps if I put 2 more commas, one before, one after her cat, like this. Purring loudly, Puddles, her cat, rubbed itself against her legs.
Excellent. That sounds really good. So, in this sentence, you could have 3 commas. One after the phrase purring loudly, and one either side of her cat. Another way of using commas is in a list. What's wrong with this? She had bought apples, oranges, pears, bananas, grapes, plums to make a fruit salad.
There are no commas. It should be. She had bought apples, comma, oranges, comma, pears, comma, bananas, comma, grapes, comma, plums.
Ah, well, that's nearly right. You've just forgotten one thing. You don't need a comma between the last 2 items on the list. You need to put in an and. So the final sentence reads, she had bought apples, oranges, pears, bananas, grapes and plums to make a fruit salad. That's the first 3 bits of punctuation to check for, and getting them right will really help improve your writing and your marks. The next bit of punctuation to check for concerns dialogue. Did you put any dialogue in your writing?
Oh, yes. I know that putting dialogue in my story is really important.
It is a good thing to do, but you have to think carefully how to write it. Can you see what's wrong with this? While you think about that, let's go back to Sentence City.
Sentence City is calming down, orders returning to the streets. But capital letters, full stops and commas can't keep it this way on their own.
Did you 2 hear someone speak?
Do you know, we're sure we did.
Oh, there she is.
Did Captain Capital send for you?
We came of our own accord.
You only have to open your mouth.
And we're there.
In fact, we're there before you open your mouth.
Too right you are. And we're always there afterwards.
You need to put speech marks around the words that are actually spoken in your story. There are some speech marks in this piece of dialogue, but not enough, and not all of them are in the right place. I'll tell you what, let's read out the dialogue. That's just the words that should be spoken. You can be Kim, and I'll be Susan, all right?
OK.
You're hungry.
So am I.
What do you want to eat?
Chips?
Speech marks have to go around the words that are actually spoken, like this. That dialogue's looking much easier to understand. But there's another thing you need to remember. You need to put each new person's line of dialogue on a new line. So we can cross through the word chips where it is and write it again on the line below. One problem with writing dialogue in a story is making sure your reader knows exactly how the dialogue should sound. You need to give your reader some clues. At the moment, they're missing from our piece of dialogue. To help us, have a look at all the clues in this sketch.
Oh dear.
Cynthia?
Gerald?
Oh, Cynthia.
Oh, Gerald.
Well, a good cautious start there from both players, clearly shown by those 2 question marks. Gerald's trying a new tactic now, dribbling up the left wing. Oh!
Oh, Cynthia. Cynthia, Cynthia. I love you. I adore you. I need you. Can't you see that?
Oh, Gerald!
Oh, my goodness, 2 very impressive exclamation marks there from Cynthia. Now, Gerald's looking confused. Can he beat that?
Oh, please. Please, please.
So, you need to put in question marks and exclamation marks. First, question marks. At the end of any question, you need a question mark. Of course, you usually don't see it when people are speaking, but it is there. First, without the question mark. Gerald. And now, with. Gerald? Can you hear the difference?
The second time it sounds like a question.
Right. So, what about in our piece of dialogue? There's a question with no question mark. What do you want to eat? So you need to put the question mark in. It has to go before the speech marks, as the question mark tells the reader how to say the question. Exclamation marks can bring excitement to your writing. Can you see anywhere where you could put an exclamation mark to make this writing a bit more exciting? Where someone is exclaiming.
How about, so am I?
Right, so am I could become, so am I. By adding an exclamation mark, the reader knows that Kim is extremely hungry, not just a bit hungry. Like question marks, exclamation marks go inside the speech marks. Exclamation marks can make your writing much more exciting, but don't use too many. A few exclamation marks go a long way. So now do you understand how punctuation can improve your writing?
Yes, and my marks.
And how saving a few minutes for the end of the test is really important?
Yes, that way I'll have time to check my punctuation.
That's right. That's the end of our programme on punctuation. We found out that extra marks are given for good punctuation and looked at the punctuation you should check towards the end of your writing test. Every sentence needs a capital letter at the beginning and a full stop at the end. You also need capital letters for proper nouns. Give your reader some breathing spaces by using commas to break up sentences. And also use commas in between the items in a list. Check that your dialogue has speech marks and that they go round the words that are spoken. If you have any questions in your dialogue, always end them with a question mark. And use exclamation marks if you want to add some excitement to your dialogue. Now you and your teacher can go over this at school. And don't forget, you can wind the tape back and look at bits of the programme again. There are also books, an English audio tape, and our interactive Revisewise website to help you prepare for your test.
The next programme is about spelling.
In this programme, to help you with your Key Stage 2 English test, we're going to look at spelling. So, what's the problem?
It's my spelling test, so can you give me some help?
Of course I can. First of all, though, let's take a look at the spelling test. When you open your spelling test, you'll see a few paragraphs of writing with some gaps. The idea is that you put in the missing words, spelled correctly. This is what happens on the day of the spelling test.
Inside the booklet, there is a text with some missing words.
First of all, you listen as your teacher reads through the passage you've been given, including the missing words.
It's usually on the backs of houses or factories.
Then it's your turn. Your teacher slowly reads the passage again, giving you time to fill in the missing words.
It passes through some very beautiful countryside.
Here's a useful hint for when you're doing your spelling test. If you miss a word out, put a mark in the space. That way you won't write the next word in the wrong place. And you can always go back at the end and have another go.
That's fine, but what about helping me with my spelling?
OK, let's see if you can do better than this.
Your final round, Leslie. 30 seconds on spelling, starting now. Cough. No, I mean spell cough.
C-O-F-F.
Incorrect. C-O-U-G-H. Through.
T-H.
Have to hurry you.
R-O-O.
Incorrect. T-H-R-O-U-G-H. Although.
A-L-T-H-O-W.
Incorrect. A-L-T-H-O-U-G-H. Enough.
It certainly is. Cough through, although, enough. They all look the same and sound different. It's impossible.
Lots of people have problems with spelling, but there are games, rules and tricks to help. Some words may sound different, but they look the same. You can make them easier to learn by grouping them together. Take those words. Cough, through, although, enough. They all end in O-U-G-H. Can you think of any more? Another way to work out how to spell some words is to split them up.
Regular spellings are great. They're so reliable. They look exactly the way you'd expect them to look. And they're easy to learn. Just split them up.
You fancy trying a few?
OK.
Horrid.
Horrid.
Similar.
Sim-I-la.
Satisfactory.
Satisfactory.
Easy.
Those are OK. But what about irregular spellings?
Irregular spellings are difficult, like all those words with silent letters that have been causing problems for hundreds of years.
The year is now 1577, and the people of England are locked in argument about how the English language should be spoken.
Here, I heard a cracking joke today.
If it's the one about the pig and the peasant, I'm not interested.
Are you ready? Knock, knock.
Oh, dear.
No, you're supposed to say who's there.
I know what I'm supposed to say, but you obviously don't. I think you're a bit behind the times.
Rubbish. A good knock joke is timeless.
It may be timeless, dear, but it's out of date. The K is silent.
Come again?
You don't pronounce the K. People haven't been pronouncing the K for ages.
People? What people?
Oh, you know, people. People who move with the times. People with their fingers on the pulse. People who keep pace with the modern world.
I keep pace with the modern world.
Rubbish. You still can't get to grips with the wheel.
That's not true. I can know everything there is to know about the wheel.
There you go again. One doesn't pronounce the K. These days it's no knife, knit, knock, knee, knuckle and night.
I see. And who said it's got to be no, knee, knife, what you said?
Nobody said. People just do it. People in the know, on the ball. It's what they call progress, dear.
It's what they call stupid, that's what it is. I've a good mind to write a letter and complain.
Since when can you write?
Well, no, I can't. But it's the principle of the thing.
Now, writing is a different matter. I have heard from that woman who lives at the end of the village, you know, the one who sits in the window writing so that everyone can see. She says one still writes the K.
Oh, one does one?
So she says.
So, one can write it, but one can't flipping well say it. That's ridiculous. It's confusing.
The modern world is confusing, precious.
Oh. Knickers.
Actually, saying the silent letters in words isn't so silly. It can help you remember them. Over to our English team for some more examples.
Surgeon. Surgeon. S-U-R-G-E-O-N.
Gnome. Gnome. G-N-O-M-E. Wrestle. Wrestle. W-R-E-S-T-L-E.
Wren. Wren. W-R-E-N.
Biscuit. Biscuit. B-I-S-C-U-I-T.
Why don't you have a go at it?
We're right, we're wrong.
That's it.
Bustle, skizzers, we're wriggle.
OK, I think we've got the idea. Spelling rules can help you remember spellings. Like I before E, as in believe, except after C, as in receive, or before a silent G, as in wait. Here's our English team with a few more helpful rules.
If you know a root word, you can often add a prefix or a suffix. For example, play, full, television.
Or care less and unusual. But don't forget this.
The Y is changed to I when you add a suffix such as est and ly to help you remember things like handy, handiest and busy, busily.
That's right. Or happy and happiest.
Take off the E and add ing, for example, hope, hoping.
Or bake, baking.
To make plurals which end in a Y, change the Y to I and add es, unless the letter before the Y is a vowel. For example, strawberry, strawberries, chimney, chimneys.
And monkey, monkeys.
Words that rhyme often have similar spellings, for example, deer and fear.
That one's often true, but you have to be careful. Some words sound the same but have different spellings, like bear and bear, or fair and fair. Rhymes or sentences can help you remember spellings. How about this one?
I remember necessary because of 1 cup and 2 sugars.
Or this one, big elephants cry and upset smaller elephants. B-E-C-A-U-S-E. Because. You have a go at making up some rhymes of your own. So, now to put these hints and tips to the test.
Concentrate now, Leslie. Hollow.
That's easy, rhymes with follow. H-O-L-L-O-W.
Correct. Knife.
Silent letters, knifey. K-N-I-F-E.
Correct. Difficulty.
That's easy. Mrs. D, Mrs. I, Mrs. F, F, I, Mrs. C, Mrs. U, Mrs. L, T, Y.
Correct.
So there are loads of good ideas to help you with your spelling. You feeling a bit happier now?
Oh, yeah. I remember writing some of those words in my school spelling book.
A spelling book. Now that is a good idea. A spelling book can be really helpful. Perhaps you have one. Put in the words you find difficult and then try and learn them. When it comes to learning words, remember LCWC. That's look at a spelling, cover it up, write it from your memory, and then check it. And keep doing it until you get it right. Whatever you do, the more you practice, the better you'll do. And here are some fun ways to do it.
These are the root words that don't change. Prefixes go at the beginning and suffixes go at the end. We're now going to play a game with prefixes and suffixes. Impossible.
Legal.
Able. Doable.
ants, attendance.
Television.
Extraordinary.
I'm playing hangman with my partner and I tell him the words and he's got to guess where to put the letters in the empty spaces. The word's excellent. Right, can I have an E there? And a T. And S there. No. And an N.
Word searches are another good way to check your spelling. Can you find the bear in there? So, what did we learn? For regular spellings, split up the words into syllables, like sim, ear, la. For words with silent letters, practice saying them, like knock and bustle and skizzers. Make up rhymes to help you remember difficult words, like necessary, 1 cup, 2 sugars. Keep a spelling book and look at it often. Now you and your teacher can go over this at school. And don't forget, you can wind the tape back and look at bits of the programme again. There are also books, an English audio tape and our interactive Revisewise website to help you prepare for your test. So we'll let you get on with your test and you get on with your revision.
Morning. Oh, cheek. I said, what a cheek. Some people have got no manners, have they? I said, some people...
Sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, well, some government minister has been making rude personal remarks. I mean, listen to this. Minister meets round-the-world runner and comments on her unusual feet. Well, I dare say his feet are nothing to write home about.
I think you'll find he's talking about her feat of endurance, her achievement, see? F-E-A-T.
Oh, right. Still, you never know these days, do you? Things you read in the paper. Yeah, listen to this. Rare buffalo discovered on American plain. So... Well, you'd think somebody would have seen a buffalo getting on board a plane, wouldn't you? Anyway, how's a buffalo going to get through customs?
They don't mean an aeroplane, stupid. They mean a desert plane, a prairie.
Oh, right. A prairie plane?
Oh, a buffalo and an aeroplane, ridiculous.